we're going to talk about your questions that you have submitted about sourdough. So I'm really excited to be able to go ahead and answer them. So the first question is, all right, so does your starter need to be doubled in order to use it? And my answer is it just needs to be established, like enough gassy bubbles, which usually takes about 2 weeks to get established to make your bread type of products. Your starter right now can be used to make the other things that are flatter type of things that we've talked about in the discard type of things. So you can find recipes for pizza, for tortillas, for any kind of sweets, the brownies, the muffins, the cookies, all of that stuff. That discard or your starter that you want to take from can be used for any types of those types of things. You just have to wait a little bit longer for your starter to be established enough so it has all that yeasty, fermented goodness that will go ahead and give these certain types of breads that lift and rise that it needs to do on its own. Now there are some recipes out there that you can put baking soda or baking powder in there, and then that goes ahead and gives them the rise as well, but it still won't be anything like a loaf of bread that you're used to seeing. You need that yeast. So you have to wait a little bit longer for your starter to go ahead and be established. Usually it takes about 2 weeks. I'll do another video next on how to tell when your starter is ready to go ahead and use it for right now, but keep using that starter and discard for all the delicious types of recipes that don't necessarily need that kind of rise and fluff out of the bread that you want. All right, so can I use the discard to make any sourdough recipe online? Yeah, that's kind of like the same question. Yeah, okay, so I think she was asking specific about some of my banana nut muffins that I have on my website. Yeah, so you could go ahead and use the discard and stuff like that now. I think that specific recipe says to let it ferment overnight. You won't need to let anything ferment overnight because your starter that is not established yet doesn't have that yeasty stuff to really help break down. It has some. So you could still do it overnight and it will help break down the 2 cups of flour or whatever it is that you add into it. But it's not, but you don't have to. You can do it the same day type of things, because the point of letting things ferment overnight is to really get that benefit of the yeast breaking down the gluten structure inside the new flour that you're adding to the recipe. So that's why you hear a lot about a long ferment versus a short ferment. I particularly stay away from any short fermenting type of recipes because I want, now because of my starter is established, I want to use that benefit of that long ferment process of letting it, the starter or the sourdough sit overnight either in the fridge or on your counter overnight for 12 hours or whatever it is, to go ahead and break down that gluten structure into the flour. Because if not, if you're using, this is one of my pet peeves that I have. I guess I shouldn't say pet peeve, but what I feel like most people start to do at first when you start to do sourdough is like you just start making all kinds of recipes using your starter, and it could be even an established starter and everything like that, but you're using it in a short ferment type of thing. So you're using a 1/2 cup of starter, and then you add in your 2.5 to 3 cups of flour, and then you're making whatever you're making, and then you're baking it right away. To me, that's not the point of sourdough. First, it's not going to give you that time to give you that sour type of flavor taste to it. Two, the biggest part is that you are not getting the benefits of using the sourdough yeasty action to go ahead and break down that future flour. You're just making a normal flour type of bread product. And I think that's where there's a misconception or the misunderstanding that this is the reason why I think a lot of people do sourdough who really understand the benefits. And I guess that's why I like to do it. Sure, would it be much easier to go ahead and throw stuff in a bread machine? And there's nothing wrong with that. Trust me, I still do that. Or use manufactured yeast to go ahead and create some things. Trust me, I still do that too. But the biggest part of me for doing sourdough is that benefit of making the flour and gluten and letting it naturally break down so that my body doesn't have to be bogged down by breaking all that gluten and all that stuff down. And that's why a lot of times people who do true sourdough type of stuff can actually, their stomachs, if they've always had some stomach problems, they can actually handle sourdough much better than they can handle any type of, you know, of other type of bread products, because they can, because the yeast, this awesome yeast that's just in the air, has already done its job, and then in that way we can go ahead and absorb the nutritional benefits of the vitamins and stuff like that that's in the flour. And there'll be a lot more benefits when we do another future video on milling or grinding up your own wheat berries. It's gonna knock your socks off, trust me, it's gonna be fabulous. But first we need to go ahead and figure out what sourdough is and why we want to do it and stuff like that. So if I need to explain that better, or you still have questions on the long ferment or short ferment, trust me, I can go on and on about that. So you let me know if I need to clarify anything like that, because I love sourdough and I love bread, so that's kind of what I just really want people to understand, that part of stuff. All right, so will there be hooch on the discard? If so, what do I do? Yes, if you leave it in the fridge, the hooch will come to the top. It's just basically the liquid coming out of the flour, and I just simply dump that off before I use it into my recipes or anything like that. When I'm adding discard to the container of previous discard, should I stir it together? No, just dump it right on top. It's no big deal. I mean, I guess if you had, a gallon bucket of discard, you would probably want to start using that in some recipes. But if it's just like, I just usually have a container that holds 3 to 4 cups or something like that, I don't worry about stirring it in. I just know that I need to probably go ahead and use it really soon. All right, will I always have this much discard? That is a really great question. No, absolutely not. So instead of having discard in the fridge, you will be taking part of your starter that's on your counter after it's already active and established, and using that part, which would be your discard, into your next new bread recipe. So you actually, sometimes I don't even have any discard, because I'm literally just taking from my little starter guy on the kitchen counter and making a new bread product every day or every 2 days and stuff like that. So there's something called oven spring, and so oven spring this is more towards this type of bread products, or the sandwich loaf and stuff like that. That is, you think it's not, once the dough hits the oven, it will give it a lift like this. So that's why it's really important to preheat your ovens before you put your bread in. One, it gives the accurate time, but two, it gives that oven spring, so it can give just a little bit more of a poof. Not like a poof, but like there's a bit of a difference when you go ahead and make some of these bread type of things. That's where you get the rise and stuff like that to finish it off. So you're thinking, you've got this container full of dough, it didn't really rise all the way, and you're like going, oh, that's going to be really flat. You go ahead and put it in your oven like it's supposed to be baked, and you will get the oven spring, and then it kind of gets bigger to what it looks like you thought it should be. Okay, then the next one is just really kind of like a lesson in baking bread. So there's always going to be failures in your bread baking of all kinds of things. And my biggest thing is, let them be failures. It's not that big of a deal. You probably learned something. Maybe it was, you mismanaged it. You didn't follow the directions. You burnt it. It was chewy inside. I mean, there could be a million things. It happens. It happens to me. It happens to everyone. Trust me, it happens to everyone. Even all those really people who have like crazy lots of videos online. They have failures too, but they've learned from those and have been able to make things better and stuff. But the thing is, if your bread product doesn't turn out, you can always turn it into breadcrumbs. I think that's kind of like a life lesson in general. Whatever, if life gives you lemons, you turn it into lemonade, right? If your oven gives you crappy bread, you turn it into breadcrumbs. And all you do is take your bread, whatever it was, unless it's completely charred, then that may be a little rough. But all you do is take your bread, you rip it up into pieces, you put it on a tray, you bake it at 250 for 20 to 30 minutes. You let it set to completely cool, make sure it's crusty and completely dried out. You put it in a food processor with whatever spices you want, and then you pulverize it into breadcrumbs. And then you have breadcrumbs that you can make chicken nuggets with, or fish with, or whatever else people do breadcrumbs with. And then especially for me, because I only use organic ingredients because I am a food prude, right? Like, that's who I am. I now have organic breadcrumbs, which are, I don't know if I've ever actually found organic breadcrumbs. They're gotta be out there. They'd probably be really expensive. So I actually purposely make my sandwich loaf all the time so that I can go ahead and just make breadcrumbs. Or like say we didn't finish this loaf, I actually put in a couple of tiny pieces into the freezer. I accumulate them to get enough to make a tray, and then I make the breadcrumbs. So when your oven gives you breadcrumbs, or gives you bread, you make breadcrumbs, which is a really great thing. So today, oh, I guess another thing is I'm going to talk about, there is so much stuff online, thanks to the algorithm of doing this challenge. It has popped up, the algorithm. You look at one thing one time, and then all of a sudden it thinks you need like a million things. People are really worried about their ear on their thing, their crumb, their hydration level, and I guess part of me is just saying, I don't give a crap about that. I want my bread to be good tasting, and I want it to hold my butter. So I really don't care about the crumb, because I don't really want my butter to fall through. And I typically don't make a lot of artisan loaves like this, because I actually like to do something what I call everyday sourdough, which is your pizza, your rolls, stuff like that, like tortilla wraps and stuff like that. To me, that's like everyday items. For this right here, these loaves, I make them a little bit now, so because I really like soups and stews. It's cold right now. We just cut it up and break it up, so it doesn't really matter to me if it's going to be, have the perfect hydration level and ear, and my scoring wasn't pretty. Honestly, I just want to bake it and eat it, so it doesn't really bother me. So my point in that is, like, try not to compare or go down a rabbit hole, chase this nut like a squirrel, or whatever those sayings are, about, like, oh my gosh, it needs to look like this, or feel like this, or do this. If it doesn't work out, you make breadcrumbs. If not, it really is good, just all so good in soups or stews, and then it's healthy, right? So just don't compare all your loaves, your future loaves, into those type of rabbit vortexes where it's just, I don't understand that. Maybe it's a competition, or like, I have no idea, but I don't get it. I just want I just want bread, and I want it to be healthy, and I want to be able to feed my family as part of the meal most of the time. So that's kind of where I come at with my sourdough, with those kind of benefits. So really great questions. I hope that helped answer some things. We're going to do, of course, more future videos are going to be released on sourdough, because I am just a wee bit passionate about it. But I hope it rubs off onto you for motivation and just kind of enjoyment of making and feeling the dough. And that's a great thing about making your own starter. It's so much easier if somebody can give you your starter, right? And you can just get it and you're like, oh, I can do stuff. And I've gifted many a starters, let me tell you. But there's something about making your own starter, with learning that process of, like, it is some weird, gross paper mache that you want to give your kids to make a volcano with. But all of a sudden, a little bit of tender, loving care every day, just a little bit. You don't have to do a lot, right? It starts to become alive. The smell is different. It gets bubbly, and it goes back down when it's hungry. I mean, it's like this little critter on your counter that can make really cool stuff. So if you're making your own starter, kudos to you. If you've already given or were given one, kudos to you that you're making stuff with it. It's all good, all sourdough love. So I'll see you guys at the next video. Yeah, keep asking the questions so I can keep yakking it in front of my phone and posting it online for you guys.